The rain in Harbor City fell hard, the kind that made the sky feel like a busted pipe no one could afford to fix. Wabash Avenue was a tunnel of wet chrome and impatience, neon signs smeared into watercolor streaks on the slick black streets. Inside the Harbor Light Diner, the air was warm and crowded with the scent of frying bacon, burnt coffee, and 1,000 small hopes clinging to their last receipts. Adrian Vale sat in the corner booth beneath a flickering open that couldn't commit. His cap was low, his coat was plain, and his watch cost as much as the building. He was a ghost in a place where ghosts still tipped in cash. The ghost had a single focus. The boy at the counter wearing a sweatshirt 3 sizes too brave. Max. Today was Max's 8th birthday. It should have been the full parade, balloons, Lego castles, a magician who could invoice. Instead, it had been Uncle Damon's big idea, a treat outside the Vale Tower, some normal. Adrian had signed off while reading a 12-digit acquisition and sipping guilt. Damon Race, brother of Mara, God, Mara, had charm like cheap cologne, loud, sticky, and everywhere at once. He had a way with Max that Adrian never learned to counterfeit. An hour ago, Adrian, as driver, called with a tremble he didn't pay for. Max had shouted to be let out of the car. He'd run. They tracked him by the soft trail of panic only a child leaves the Harbor Light. A stool near the register, a slice of chocolate cake taller than the kid's silence. Max's new sneakers, wide enough to see the city try and fail to dirty them, didn't quite touch the floor. The cake sat untouched. The milkshake sweated through its paper cup like it was auditioning for anxiety. And then it happened. A single tear slid down Max's cheek with an elegance that broke Adriana's heart in half like a fortune cookie with no future inside. Adrian moved to stand clumsy love, queued up behind too many apologies, when a waitress appeared in Max. S-orbit like she'd been there all along. She had dark eyes that had learned how to hold a lot and spill nothing, and an apron that had seen better tips. The name on her tag said Lena, but the scuffed plastic said keep going. "Hey, Space Cadet," she murmured, sliding a napkin over like a treaty. "That cake's gonna unionize if you keep ignoring it." Max didn't answer. Another tear. Another small, brave silence. Lena pulled a pen from behind her ear, tilted the napkin, and sketched a rocket in 10 seconds, flat a scribble with soul blasting past a smiling moon that wore sunglasses because the moon, respectfully, had drip. She flicked in a starfield, a tiny astronaut waving from the porthole. "For your mission," she said, pushing it gently to him. "Launch window closes in 3, 2. Max touched the ink lines like they were a braille for hope. His shoulders unknotted 1 stitch. He took a tiny bite of cake, the ceremonial kind. He didn't smile, but the absence of pain looked like its own kind of joy. "Rossi," barked a voice from the kitchen. "Order up, and stop flirting with the customers." "Flirting implies hope, Carl," Lena deadpanned, then leaned into Max. "Call signs Lena. If you need a co-pilot, I'm around." She swiped a thumb under his tear track, the kind of small, human touch that Mara used to give freely and Adrian had forgotten how to ask for. Then she pivoted away, balancing 2 plates like an apology to gravity, and vanished through the swinging doors. Adrian watched 20 minutes of service economy ballerina refilling coffee like penance, ferrying plates through a jungle of elbows, smiling when the world didn't. He saw the way she pressed a hand to her lower back when she turned, a private treaty with the ache. He recognized a pattern he'd paid 1,000 analysts to model and never once believed: resilience without theatrics. The driver materialized, gave a nod. Max was in the car, belted and breathing. Adrian stood. He left a crisp 100 under his untouched coffee and stepped into the rain, which hit his face like an intervention. He pulled out his phone and made the call. "Kincaid," answered the voice, a professional blade with vowels. "I have a name," Adrian said, the rain steady as a metronome. "Lena Navarro, Harbor Light Diner, Wabash and 7th. I want to know everything. Family debts, school, ambitions. If she ever doodled on a bus ticket, I want it scanned and on my desk by 9. Is she a threat? Kincaid asked. Adrian looked back through the fogged glass. Lena emerged with a fresh pot of coffee. She glanced at the empty stool where Max had been, and for one unguarded heartbeat, she looked like grief with a job. No, Adrian said, surprised by his own certainty. She's the opposite. He ended the call. He didn't know it yet, but he did just yank a pin out of a grenade and set it gently on a linen napkin. The shrapnel would be strange and beautiful. The file landed on Adrian's obsidian desk at 8:41 on May, bound in black leather like pennants. Kincaid did delete buttons for breakfast. Subject, Navarro, Lena Marie, 23, born South Harbor. Father, Ernesto, deceased scaffolding collapse 11 years ago. Mother, Paloma, night custodian, city schools. Sibling, Sophia, 14. Education, scholarship, Lakeview Institute of Art, photoreal portraitist, dropout 2nd year. Medical, Sophia Navarro, atypical spinal muscular atrophy. Prognosis poor without experimental intervention. Insurance, tapped. Debt, rude. The file moved like a sad song that refused to be background noise. It had bank statements that bled, text transcripts stitched with late-night apologies, and grainy photos that shouldn't have been that moving. Lena asleep on the green line, sketchpad open in her lap, capturing the faces of people who didn't know they were being seen. Lena laughing in a hospital room with Sophia, a universe of love squashed into fluorescent light. No drugs, no gambling, no secret burner accounts. Just a young woman dragging a boatload of reality with a fraying rope and finding the breath to be kind to a stranger's son. Adrian closed the folder and stared out at Harbor City, glass spires playing dress-up as certainty. He knew the calculus: anonymous donation, patronizing, public fundraiser, exposure she didn't consent to, hiring her, a transaction that could masquerade as dignity. He drove himself that evening, left the Maybach sulking like a bored panther, and took a car that could blend. The harbor light's bell jangled as he stepped in, drawing a quick, greasy smile from Carl, whose tie had given up. "Table for one, sir?" Carl said, already calculating a tip that could retire his bitterness. "I'm here to speak with Ms. Navarro," Adrian replied. Lena's eyes flicked up. Recognition flashed not from the booth, but from 1,000 finance headlines. Adrian Vale, the man who could change interest rates by coughing. He watched her choose courage without being asked. "Use my office," Carl oozed, gesturing to a closet pretending. "That won't be necessary," Adrian said mildly. "The car will be more private." Lena's mouth twitched into the first hint of a joke. "You always say that to waitresses." "Only the exceptional ones," he answered, and for once it didn't sound like a line. The sedan was quiet, smelling of leather and second chances. Lena sat straight-backed, hands folded like she might have to catch herself. "If this is about your son," she began, "I hope I didn't overstep. He looked like a planet that lost its orbit." "You didn't overstep," Adrian said. "You were the first person in a long time who didn't." Her laugh was a quick flash that surprised both of them. Harbor Light has a 2-drink minimum on sincerity. He took a breath. He knew how to pitch to men who wore cufflinks that weighed more than their words. This wasn't that. "My son Max lost his mother," he said plainly. "He has stuff. He doesn't have a person. He likes art. He needs someone who notices. I'd like to hire you, your own studio in my home. Time with Max every day. The rest of your hours are yours to make magic or mess." Lena blinked. "I'm a waitress." "You're an artist," he corrected softly, "and an empath, which is rarer. What's it pay?" She asked, turning practical because dreams without numbers are just wishes that ghost people. 250,000 a year, he said like a weather report. full benefits. And Vale Foundation assumes all medical costs for you and your immediate family. The city outside the windshield kept raining like the punchline was late. Inside the car, reality performed a backflip. Lena's breath hiccuped, all medical. Sophia, he added, because secrets couldn't help themselves around Kincaid. I know about the trial you can't get into. Her eyes went shiny in a way that embarrassed the rain. Why me? You could hire an artist with followers and a studio that smells like eucalyptus. I don't need a famous artist, Adrian said. I need a good human. Max lit up when he looked at you. I don't buy that with any currency I know. She stared at her reflection in the dark screen of the dashboard, saw the waitress with the tired wrists and the girl who drew rockets on napkins like they could outrun gravity. She thought about Sophia's laugh that tried so hard and the stack of bills that didn't. I accept, she whispered, like the word had been waiting in her mouth for years. Miss Hurrow, my chief of staff, will reach out with details, Adrian said, letting out a breath he didn't know he'd been learning to fear. Background checks, NDA, the joyless kind. Monday start. He drove her to South Harbor, past muraled brick and sirens that did their best. At the curb, she hesitated, keys biting her palm. This isn't charity, he added, as if reading her most stubborn protest. It's strategy with a soul. Cute, she said, leveling him with a look that had boundaries and gratitude in the same room. But if your world tries to eat me, I will bite back. I'd expect nothing less. The elevator to Vale Tower didn't have floor numbers. It had a keycard and opinions. Doors opened into a foyer that looked like money dreaming of silence. 2-story glass. Marble like a glacier that had hired a stylist. A single feral abstract painting that punched color into the white on white like it had paid the security deposit. Miss Harrow appeared, a woman who could file a lawsuit with a glare. She marched Lena through a tour that felt like orientation at Olympus. The suite that would be Lena's had more windows than her entire building, and the studio had a north light so delicious that her fingers itched. She met Max in a room that refused to be cozy. He was smaller than her memory and braver than most grown-ups. He held up the napkin rocket, edges softened by survival. You're the lady from the diner, he said, a smile ghosting around the corners like it might land soon. That's me, she said. I hear you're a secret weapon with a pencil. They started with clay and jokes. Max thawed like the first day of spring remembers how, for the first time in forever, laughter invaded the tower, bounced off the art, and hid in the corners like it belonged. Adrian watched from the doorway some afternoons, his tie loosened, a glass of whiskey sweating honestly. He stood very still, a man trying not to scare a miracle away. He saw his son's spine unbend, heard a laugh he hadn't bribed. He logged the ROI and tried not to cry. And then Damon arrived. 11 out of 10 handsome, all veneers and varnish. Damon Royce walked in like he owned stock in gravity and negotiated it down. His suit was 2 degrees too shiny. His smile was a weapon with TS a pre-check. He swept into Lena's studio uninvited, picked up a charcoal portrait of Max mid-concentration, and pretended to appreciate art while hunting for leverage. So you're the new court jester, he said lightly. We doing balloon animals, or just the whole healing through paint cliché? I'm Lena, she replied. We're doing kindness. It's wild. You should try it. Max slid closer to her, small shoulder against hers like a vote. Everyone wants to be your friend, kiddo, Damon sang, ruffling Max's hair like he was granting access. He cut Lena a look lacquered in contempt. Some people bring sob stories in their aprons. Uncle Damon, Max said, frowning. Be nice. Always, Damon replied, not even trying to hide the lie. That night, Lena called home. Paloma answered with a voice that had learned to sound fine to keep the world moving. Sophia squealed when she heard about a studio, and then had to catch her breath. Hope was a muscle that had atrophied and needed physical therapy. A week later, the tower hosted a dinner for investors who could buy a sunset and ask for a receipt. Lena wasn't on the guest list. She walked through the living room on the way to her suite and saw Damon pin Max near the glass like a butterfly specimen. "People from nowhere will do anything for money," Damon whispered. "Including play nice. I need you to be my little detective. If Miss Napkin Rocket asks for anything weird, you tell me." Lena's chest went full furnace. "Enough," she said, stepping forward before common sense could tackle her. Damon turned, smile snapping into place like Velcro. "We're having a private family chat, Waitress." "Then don't weaponize a child," she shot back, hands shaking, voice steady. "Aim at me. Leave him out of it." The room chilled as Adrian entered with Mr. Tanaka, an investor who saw more than anyone invited him to. Damon rearranged his face. Adrian cut Lena a surgical look, cool, curt, a wordless not now. Humiliation surged up, hot and metallic. Lena swallowed it whole. "You're right," she said, tight. "I'm sorry to interrupt." She left with the bars of the glass tower suddenly visible, glittering and real. She didn't see Mr. Tanaka glance at Adrian, curious, or Adrian's eyes harden with a new private calculation. Something had shifted. A war had been declared in a language only 3 people heard. The week after the almost explosion turned into a masterclass in polite warfare. Meetings were meetings, meals were meals, and everyone's smiles came with seatbelts. Damon Rice was conspicuously scarce, which in his case meant he texted 3 group chats at once and left scented contrition all over the tower. Adrian went neutral CEO mode, watching Lena the way a surgeon watches a heart monitor. He wasn't cold, he was measuring. Lena felt the scrutiny like weather, not personal but inescapable. She hid in the Northlight studio and let the canvas take the hits. The paintings that came out of her were not safe. A canary with oil-slick plumage perched inside a gilded key. A skyline of glass towers rendered as ships trapped in ice. A portrait of a smile cracking like porcelain pretty until it wasn't. On the fridge, Max taped up a lopsided watercolor dragon named Noodles, which promptly became the apartment's emotional mascot. Max clung to Lena like gravity-picked favorites. They built a clay city where the sidewalks were trampolines and the crosswalks told jokes. They invented a space dock Captain Comet, who solved intergalactic problems by listening first and only barking if absolutely necessary. They binge-read a graphic novel and debated whether villains need therapy or prison. Max, therapy, duh. Lena, both can be true. One night, as rain stitched the glass, Adrian drifted into the studio with that careful stillness he was practicing. Lena was painting a study, a small bird mid-flight against a wall of invisible wind. "That's honest," he said. He almost added, "and it scares me," but left it in the glass. "It's just a study," she deflected, wiping her hands. "Don't worry, I do pretty too. How do you see this place?" he asked, not moving closer. She considered the room, the clean lines, the disciplined light, the way laughter sounded like rebellion here. "Like someone installed a mute button on chaos," she said. "Beautiful, useful, dangerous if you forget the world still makes noise." Something like respect flickered across his face. Then he shut the door on it. Old habits cashed their checks. Damon's apology tour kicked off on a Thursday with a bouquet so large it required its own Uberxel. The card said I was out of line. Let's reset. The flowers smelled like a committee meeting. He arrived just after lunch, bearing a limited edition pastel set for Max and a grin calibrated to charm. He hovered in the doorway of the studio like a mosquito with a trust fund. "Truce?" he offered. "For Max," Lena said, and meant it. She wasn't interested in winning. She was interested in the boy who'd started humming again. They drew for an hour. Lena helped Max layer sky blues without making mud. Damon hovered helpfully, a phrase that did not exist until that very moment. When she turned to rinse brushes, Damon's hand ghosted over her open satchel. Something small and heavy thumped into the bottom like a bad secret pretending to be a paperweight. He was gone 5 minutes later, all teeth and exit lines. Lena didn't see the drop. Max did. He frowned, filed it in the drawer where 8-year-olds keep their lightning. Adrian returned from a 36-hour headbutt with Zurich looking like jet lag owed him money. He summoned Lena to his office an hour after wheels down. Miss Harrow stood to the side, spine like a metronome. Damon, of course, lounged near the window, immaculate and grave. "Miss Navarro," Adrian began, voice stripped of everything but syllables. "An item of significant sentimental value has gone missing from my bedroom. A platinum cufflink custom stamped with my late wife's initials." The room bent. Lena went cold. "I don't know anything about that." Damon sighed with theatrical restraint. "It's awkward, Adrian. But access has been limited. Me, the veteran staff, and..." He spread his hands like a magician producing doubt. "I hate to even say it." "If there's a suspicion," Lena cut in, voice trembling but steady, "search my room, my studio, my bag. I want this clear." Damon's smile flashed quick victory's reflection. "Sensible idea." He left with a security aide and returned with a small velvet pouch that might as well have been a guillotine. He opened it over the desk and tipped out a single cold glint, the cufflink. The engraved MV caught the light like a funeral bell. "It was in the bottom of her satchel," Damon reported, eyes shining with sorrow he clearly rented by the hour. Silence pressed on Lena's chest until her ribs complained. "I didn't." She stopped. The sentence sounded flimsy even to her. Poverty makes truth look like excuses. Adrian's gaze was arctic. Not cruel, just closed. He had trusted Data his entire life. Right now, Data sat on his desk and spelled guilty. "Pack your things, Miss Navarro," he said, each word a carefully placed step on thin ice. "Security will escort you out. Your contract is terminated for cause." The floor shifted. Sophia's treatment calendar unfurled in Lena's mind and burst into flames. She reached for another argument and found air. "You're lying, Uncle Damon," said a small voice from the doorway. Max stood there, pale and incandescent. He looked like courage had dared him and lost. "Buddy," Damon laughed, too high, grown-up stuff. "Yesterday," Max said, stepping inside. "You put something shiny in Lena's bag when she was helping me with the sky. You thought I didn't see. You always think I don't see." No one breathed. Miss Herr's eyes flicked to Adrian. Damon's smile cracked like sugar and creme brulee, and what leaked out wasn't sweet. "He's confused, Adrian," Damon snapped. "She's manipulated him." Adrian looked at his son and saw a truth that did not need an invoice. The granitic mask on his face fractured. He pressed the intercom. "Kincaid," he said, voice low enough to be dangerous. "Bring the preliminary audit on the Royce-managed trust. And put security outside this office. No one leaves." Damon went a color human skin, shouldn't. Kincaid slid in moments later, file in hand, expression carved from "Yes, sir." Adrian flipped pages. His jaw set. He flipped more. His jaw didn't move again because gravity had pinned it. "High-risk positions that somehow all cratered," Adrian murmured, almost to himself. "Fees to shell companies in the Caymans. A private poker debt service disguised as consultation. 18 months of siphoning." He looked up at Damon with a strange, cold pity. "You didn't just mismanage my son's trust. You robbed him because you kept losing at a game you were never smart enough to quit." Damon's charm abandoned ship. "I can fix it. You tried to fix it," Adrian corrected softly, "by framing the one person who made my son laugh." He glanced at the cufflink, a relic, a wound, then at Lena, who stood very still and very human. "And you used Mireille's initials to do it." "Adrian," Damon tried, voice going narrow. "Family." "Family is what you don't do this to," Adrian said, not raising his voice, somehow making the room louder anyway. "Kincaid." 2 security officers appeared, calm, professional, immune to tantrums. Damon pivoted between rage and pleading like a man trying door after door in a hallway that kept getting longer. "Escort Mr. Royce to the security office," Adrian said. "NYPD has jurisdiction. I'll press charges, fraud, embezzlement, and whatever else the city wants to name. I will not bury this, Damon. I will not save you from yourself." Damon's eyes collided with Lena's as they took his arms. There was no apology in them, only the narcissist's ultimate wound, being caught without control of the narrative. They let him out. The door clicked shut. The room exhaled. Lena's muscles forgot how to behave. She sank into a chair like gravity had finally cashed a favor. Max moved first, crossing the carpet and folding himself into her lap, small hands in a tight knot. Lena pressed her face to his hair and promised, internally and forever, "I'm not leaving because you told the truth." Adrian came around the desk. For a heartbeat, he looked as lost as any man with too much power and just enough clarity. "Miss Navarro-Lena," he said, voice rough-edged. "I am unspeakably sorry." She lifted her head, tears finally free. She wasn't a crier. Today made exceptions. "I doubt for a living," he continued, almost laughing at himself. "I doubted you because it was easy, and I merely broke the only good thing that's walked into this tower in years." "You believed your son," she said, "because Grace was a muscle too and hers had practice. That matters more than how long it took to get there." Adrian knelt so he could look Max in the eye without reaching down. "You were brave," he told him. "Your mother would be proud. I am proud. And if you ever see me being dumb again, you say my full name, okay?" Max sniffed. "Adrian Michael Vale, you were so dumb." He managed a watery grin. Lena let out a startled laugh that tilted the moment just enough to save it. "Contract reinstated," Miss Harris said crisply from the side, already tapping on her tablet. "Retroactive. With an increase in an apology letter drafted by counsel that will make other apology letters cry. Also," Adrian added, glancing at Lena, "about Sophia." Lena's heart seized. "Is something is moving?" he said quickly. "The Vale Foundation is one of the primary funders on Dr. Ars Thorne's SM at trial. No relation to Damon, thank God twice. I asked for an early review of Sophia's case. She wasn't just admitted, Lena. She started gene therapy 3 days ago. Initial biomarkers are better than modeled." Lena went still, like a bell right after it struck. Then the sound came a sob that wasn't sadness, wasn't anything but release. She covered her mouth, then didn't, because some moments want both hands. Max squeezed her fingers. "Does that mean Sophia can come build Noodles a dragon buddy?" "It means," Adrian said, smiling for real, "you two will argue about which dragon gets the top shelf." Kincaid cleared his throat with the politeness of a man who carried crisis like a briefcase. "NYPD incoming. Media will sniff within an hour. I recommend we shift Mr. Royce to the service elevator and prep a statement that reads like gravity inescapable." "Do it," Adrian said. He turned back to Lena. "If you want to throw a pie at my face for the last hour, I will stand there and take it." "I don't waste pie," Lena said, tears and laugh braided. "But I might make you scrub paint water if you act like an algorithm again." "Deal," he said, and for the first time since Mara died, the word felt like a promise that wasn't also a contract. News travels at the speed of outrage. By afternoon, a finance blog had posted a blurry shot of Damon in the lobby, captioned "Royce out," followed by 10,000 comments, 3 conspiracy threads, and 1 unrelated argument about bagels. A gossip account posted "Hearing a nanny artist scandal," and got ratioed by a collective of art teachers with pitchforks and impeccable fonts. Inside the tower, the world bent toward repair. Max ate 2 slices of pizza, unseen tower scandal, then ran to the studio to inform Captain Comet that villains can wear cologne. Lena cleaned her brushes, the rhythm studying her like a heartbeat she could choose. Adrian hovered in the doorway, less ghost, more man. "We're okay." He asked small, like the answer might break. "We're working on it," Lena said. "That's better than okay." He glanced at the cufflink on his desk, then at the boy, then at the woman who had drawn a rocket on a napkin like it was a lifeboat. "I'm moving Mars things to a safe that I into a metaphor," he said. "You could also just lock your bedroom," Lena offered. "High-tech solution, doorknob." He cracked a laugh that startled him. "Doorknob, revolutionary." "Disruption," she deadpanned. "I'll write the white paper." They stood there a moment, exhausted and upright. Below them, Harbor City kept raining and meaning it. Above them, the tower's lights softened, as if the building itself had decided to stop pretending it didn't want to be a home. That night, after Max fell asleep mid-comic with a Cheeto dust mustache, evidence promptly scrubbed by Miss Harrow, who drew the line at orange, Lena stepped out onto the balcony. The city breathed like a sleeping animal. She called Paloma and put her on speaker. Sophia's voice, bright, thin, stubborn, spilled through the tiny phone like sunlight in a jar. "Is the dragon named Noodles for real?" Sophia demanded. "It is now," Lena said, tears back, gentler this time. "We're gonna need a bigger shelf." Behind her, Adrian set 2 mugs on the table, coffee and tea both. He didn't ask what she wanted. He had learned that some kindnesses were choosing, and "Tomorrow," he said, not looking at her, "Kincaid will coordinate with the DA. We'll protect Max from the noise." Lena nodded at the city. "He's got Captain Comet and Noodles." "He'll be fine, will you?" Adrian asked. She thought of Damon's hands on the edges of her life, of Mara's initials flashing like a trap, of Max's voice cutting the room open and letting the light in. She thought of Sophia and paints and rockets and the rude abundance of a second chance. "Yeah," she said, letting the word find its own feet. "I will." Down on Wabash, the harbor light's neon sputtered to life, stubborn as hope. Somewhere inside, Carl was telling a bad joke to a trucker who didn't laugh but tipped anyway. Life kept being life, unreasonable, hilarious, expensive, precious. In the tower, a new routine clicked into place with a softer sound. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was maintenance care paid in small, unglamorous installments. The kind that makes endings optional and beginnings renewable. 6 months later, the Vale Tower had stopped pretending to be a museum and started admitting it was a house. There were fingerprints on the stainless steel fridge, Max's, Sophia's, sometimes Adrian's when he forgot to use the handle. There was a crooked clay dragon named Noodles still sitting on the mantel like he'd been hired as head of security. There were post-it notes with doodles stuck to the glass wall of Lena's studio, which Miss Harrow claimed ruined the lines but never actually removed. The biggest difference? Noise. Laughter lived here now, and it didn't bother paying rent. Sophia had joined the rhythm of the tower like a new song everyone already knew the chorus to. The experimental therapy was working, not a miracle, not instant, but steady and real. She could walk without braces some days, laugh without coughing, dream without fearing that alarm clock. She and Max became a duo, plotting elaborate storylines for Captain Comet and Noodles the Dragon. At one point, they convinced Adrian to voice a villain in their comic doctor Interest Rate, who tried to charge everyone for breathing. Adrian leaned into it so hard that Max nearly fell off the sofa laughing. Even Miss Harrow cracked once. Sophia challenged her to do a TikTok dance. Miss Harrow performed it with frightening precision, uploaded it on a private burner account, and swore everyone to secrecy. Max, of course, saved the video in 3 places. "Leverage," he whispered. Meanwhile, Lena's art was blooming. Her studio filled with canvases that walked the line between confession and rebellion. She painted a portrait of Max and Sophia, sitting cross-legged, surrounded by a chaos of crayons with sunlight making halos out of dust motes. She painted Adrian once unasked, catching him in the reflection of the glass wall, Not the billionaire, not the titan, but a tired man watching his son smile. Adrian came in one night, saw it, and froze. "That's me. That's who I see," she said. "Not who you sell to Forbes." He didn't answer. But the next morning, the painting had been moved to the dining area. It hung there quietly, a reminder that identity could be stolen back. But peace was never the tower's default setting. Damon Rice's arrest made headlines, then tabloids, then podcasts with titles like Rich Men, Poor Choices. His lawyers were loud, his debts louder. He managed bail with money that wasn't his, then immediately started campaigning in the press. The narrative? The poor waitress manipulated the grieving heir. The billionaire fell for a sob story. Damon Rice was the real victim. It was trash, but it stuck in corners. Reporters started sniffing around the diner. Paparazzi caught Lena on the subway with a grocery bag and spun it as Vale's mystery mistress living double life. Carl at the Harbor Light suddenly discovered he was available for interviews, which meant he charged $200 to tell journalists Lena once preferred decaf, the tower tightened security. But the noise still seeped in. One evening, Lena scrolled too far on her phone and saw a thread calling her a gold digger, a fraud, even Vale's nanny with benefits. She dropped the phone like it burned. For the first time since she'd moved in, she considered packing her things. Max noticed. Kids always notice. "You're not leaving," he said flatly from the doorway, clutching noodles like a bodyguard. "If you go, Damon wins." Lena sat on the floor, hands over her face. "Buddy, sometimes it's not about winning. Sometimes it's about surviving the comment section." Max plopped down beside her. "Then don't read them. Captain Comet says doom scrolling is just free poison." She laughed through the ache. "Smart dog." "He gets it from me," Max shrugged. Adrian dealt with the storm his way by calling meetings, drafting statements, and threatening lawsuits with the kind of precision that made lawyers break out in nervous sweat. But privately, in the silence of his office, he stared at a photo of Damon and Mara from years ago and wondered how many blind spots grief had carved into him. One late night, he found Lena still painting, headphones in, messy bun collapsing under gravity. He leaned in the doorway, arms folded. "They're going to keep talking, you know." "I know," she said, brush still moving. "Doesn't mean they're right. You don't deserve it." She set the brush down, finally meeting his eyes. Neither did Mara. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of ghosts. Adrian crossed the room, not to argue, not to defend, just to sit. They shared the quiet, the city lights washing over the studio like confetti too tired to sparkle. The storm peaked at a fundraiser gala, a glittering spectacle hosted downtown at the Armitage Hotel. Adrian was expected to attend. Lena was explicitly not. Max, being 8 and stubborn, demanded she come anyway. "It's just a fancy dinner with shinier forks," he reasoned. "You eat, you talk, you leave. Easy." Against her instincts, Lena agreed. She borrowed a dress from a friend of Miss Harrow's navy blue, simple, the kind that looked expensive without screaming it. When she walked into the ballroom, conversations faltered. She wasn't a waitress tonight. She wasn't a scandal headline. She was someone. And then Damon Rice arrived. He wasn't supposed to pending trial, pending everything, but he walked in like he still owned the air, smiling, shaking hands, whispering to journalists. When he spotted Lena across the room, his smirk widened like a trap. "Well, well," he said loudly enough to catch the ears of 3 donors, the famous muse herself. "Tell me, Lena, how much is loyalty paying these days?" The words dripped poison. Cameras clicked. Lena felt the heat of every stare. Adrian moved instantly, placing himself between them, his voice colder than the champagne. "She doesn't owe you a word, Damon." "Oh, Adrian," Damon purred. "Still protecting your investments?" The crowd gasped, the kind of collective inhale that promised headlines. Adrian's jaw tightened. Lena's fists clenched. Max, who had snuck in with Sophia and Miss Harrow's reluctant blessing, stood on a chair and shouted, "Hey, Uncle Damon!" You were just jealous because Captain Comet says you're a level 3 villain with no redeeming qualities? The ballroom went dead silent, then someone laughed, then another. And then the sound spread like fire on dry grass. Damon's face flushed scarlet. Adrian fought a smile he didn't dare show, but his hand brushed Max's shoulder in silent thanks. Damon stormed out, trailed by cameras. The narrative shifted in real time. Not billionaire scandal, not gold digger myth, but a story about a kid who called out a villain at a gala. That night, as they rode back to the tower, Max fell asleep against Lena's arm, Sophia humming softly beside him. Adrian watched them in the rearview mirror and said quietly, "You're not going anywhere, none of you." For the first time, Lena believed it. The gala incident should have ended Damon Rice. A disgraced uncle roasted by an 8-year-old superhero in front of donors, cameras, and half of Harbor City's elite. That should have been his curtain call, but Damon didn't exit. Villains never leave the stage, they improvise. 2 weeks later, headlines whispered a new phrase, the Royce Memo. An anonymous leak claimed Adrian Vale's empire wasn't built entirely clean. Offshore holdings, shady partnerships. A whole dossier of maybe facts, maybe lies, all stamped with the illusion of credibility. It had Damon's fingerprints all over it, sloppy, theatrical, meant to wound the image Adrian spent decades polishing. Adrian's board panicked, investors twitched, and the press smelled blood. Inside the tower, Kincaid ran a counter-intel operation that looked suspiciously like war prep. Ms. Harrow tripled security, replacing half the staff with veterans whose smiles had been surgically removed. Max noticed, of course he did. "Why is everyone whispering like it's a funeral?" He asked Lena while sketching Captain Comet, punching an asteroid shaped like Damon's head. "Because adults forget kids can hear," she said softly. The pressure shifted everything. Adrian pulled longer hours, snapping at emails like they'd personally insulted Mara. He wasn't cruel, but he was distant defaulting to the only safe role he knew, CEO. Lena felt it most. One night, she overheard a donor's wife sneering in an interview. Vale's pet waitress turned nanny. That's his crisis management strategy. How quaint. It hit her harder than Damon's lies. Doubt slithered in, whispering that she was a liability, not an anchor. She painted furiously dark canvases of towers cracking under lightning, faces smudged into anonymity, a golden bird flying straight into a storm. Adrian walked in once late at night, catching her mid-brushstroke. The canvas was raw, his silhouette rendered in jagged black, surrounded by hands clawing at him. "That's how you see me?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, brush hovering. "That's how the world sees you, and sometimes I think you let them." His mouth twitched, caught between anger and admiration. "And how do you see me?" Lena wiped her hands, looked him dead in the eye. Like a man who's terrified to need anyone again. The words hung there, sharper than any audit. Adrian turned, walked out. But the next morning, coffee appeared in her studio, her favorite, not his. No, just coffee. One rainy Thursday, Sophia spotted a drone hovering outside the tower windows. Not paparazzi, this one was sleeker, professional. Security scrambled, but by the time they reached the terrace, it was gone. That night, a USB stick arrived by courier addressed to Adrian. Inside, photos of Lena, grainy surveillance shots on the subway, in the diner, laughing with Sophia outside the clinic. The message was clear. She's being watched. Adrian's face when he saw them could have frozen steel. "He's not just after me anymore," he said. "Then he's already lost," Lena shot back, fire in her tone. "Because I don't scare that easy." Max, listening from the stairs, declared, "Captain Comet says Damon's just a level 2 villain now. Level 3 got revoked when he rage quit the gala." Even Adrian laughed at that. For a moment, the tension cracked. The storm finally broke one night when Adrian found Lena on the rooftop terrace. Sketchbook open, city lights flickering below. "You should have left months ago," he said quietly. "No one would have blamed you." "Maybe," she admitted. "But then Max wouldn't laugh. Sophia wouldn't dream about college. And you'd still be drinking alone in your glass tower, pretending marble fixes loneliness." He exhaled, long and unguarded. "You make it sound simple." "It is," she said, closing her sketchbook. "Stop acting like you can control every narrative. Some stories, you just live." For the first time, he reached out, not with money, not with contracts, but with a hand. A real one. Tentative, human. She took it. Below them, Harbor City buzzed. Above them, storm clouds parted just enough to reveal one stubborn star. The next morning, news broke. Damon had secured an exclusive TV interview, primetime, promising the truth about Adrian Vale, the tower, and the woman who almost destroyed it. Adrian closed the paper. Lena clenched her fists. Max slammed his spoon into cereal. "Then we fight back," he said, Captain Comet style. Adrian raised a brow. "And what does that mean?" Max grinned. "It means we don't let villains tell the story. We tell it first." Lena glanced at Adrian, saw the spark in his eyes, the old strategist waking up with a new kind of war to fight. For the first time, Adrian Vale didn't look like a man trying to protect his empire. He looked like a father, a partner, a human ready to protect his family. The real battle was about to begin. The city never slept, but Harbor City didn't just stay awake, it gossiped. Damon Royce's interview was everywhere before it even aired. Teaser clips, hashtags, reaction videos titled 10 Signs Damon Royce is Gaslighting the World. The Vale Tower felt like a fortress under siege. Inside, though, something had shifted. The family had decided not to play defense anymore. "Let him talk," Adrian told Kincaid, who looked like he wanted to wrestle the TV station off the air. "We'll answer first." "Answer how?" Lena asked. "By telling the truth," Adrian replied simply, "and by making sure the people who matter see it." Max banged the table like a miniature general. "We live stream it." "Everyone does it now. Even teachers. Mr. Alvarez live streamed his cat's birthday last week. Millions of views." Sophia giggled. "It's true." The cat had a tiny party hat. Lena tried not to laugh. Adrian Vale, billionaire, CEO, streaming like a Twitch gamer. Adrian's mouth twitched. If it wins, it wins. Within hours, Miss Hurrow had converted the tower's living room into a broadcast studio lights mix, a backdrop that didn't look too staged. "You're not selling a stock," she warned Adrian. "You're selling yourself. Try humanity, it's trending." The camera went live at 7 p.m. sharp. Instead of a polished corporate statement, Adrian sat on the sofa. Beside him, Max, Sophia, and Lena, no suits, no script, just a family. "My name is Adrian Vale," he began. "You've heard a lot about me lately, Lee. Some of it true. Some of it invented by a man who betrayed my trust. But tonight isn't about me. It's about what's real." He gestured to Max, who leaned forward like he'd been waiting for this moment all week. "Hi, I'm Max," he said. "Uncle Damon is lying. He tried to trick everyone, but he can't trick me. He framed Lena because he was jealous. And also, he cheats at Monopoly badly." The comments exploded. "Max for president. This kid is iconic. Not him dragging Monopoly into it." Sophia chimed in. "And because of Adrian and Lena, I'm getting treatment that saved my life. That's the truth." Lena added quietly, "I was a waitress. I'm still an artist. I never asked for the spotlight. But if you want to know what Adrian Vale invests in, it isn't stocks or towers. It's here." She tapped Max's shoulder. "It's family." Adrian finished. "Money can move markets. But kindness moves lives. My son taught me that." Lena reminded me, "That's the truth." Damon Rice wanted to destroy it. We won't let him. The stream cut. Within minutes, it trended #1 worldwide. The interview aired the next night, and it was a disaster. Damon had prepared charm, but what he didn't prepare for was memes. Every clipped smirk became a gif. Every deflection turned into TikTok audio. When he said, "I only ever wanted what's best for my family," someone immediately stitched it with Max yelling, "Liar." At the gala. By morning, the public narrative was decided. Damon Rice, level 0 villain. That weekend, Lena's first official gallery show opened in Soho. The collection was called the Glass Tower Canvases Painted During Nights When She Thought She'd Break. They were raw, defiant, beautiful. The centerpiece was a massive oil painting, a diner counter, a boy with tears on his cheek, a tired waitress leaning in with a napkin, and blurred in the chrome reflection of the napkin dispenser, a man in a baseball cap watching from the shadows. The crowd hushed in front of it. "That's the cornerstone," Lena explained softly to a reporter. The moment everything changed, Adrian stood beside her, transfixed. For once, he didn't look like a titan of industry. He looked like a man who saw his failures and his redemption in oil and canvas. A collector stepped forward. "Name your price," he said. "I'll double it." Adrian shook his head before Lena could answer. "I'm sorry. That one's not for sale." "Why not?" The collector frowned. Adrian's gaze never left the painting. "Because it already belongs somewhere at home." That night, they returned to the tower, not as Billionaire, an employee, but as something closer to family. Max and Sophia ran ahead, arguing about whether Captain Comet could beat Spider-Man in a fair fight. Lena lingered on the balcony, city lights flickering like restless stars. Adrian joined her, 2 mugs in hand. Coffee for her, tea for him. No words at first, just the hum of Harbor City below. "You didn't have to defend me like that," she said finally. "Yes, I did," he replied. "You saved my son in a diner. You saved me in ways I can't quantify. That's worth more than any empire." She turned, surprised by the weight in his voice. He didn't look at her like an employer. He looked at her like a man grateful to finally not be alone. For the first time, she let herself imagine it wasn't just a golden cage anymore. Maybe, just maybe, it was a home. And somewhere out there, Damon Rice was still plotting. But for now, for tonight, they had won. For weeks, life in the tower found a rhythm that felt suspiciously like peace. Sophia's treatments continued to work. Max's laughter became so constant that Miss Harrow had to retreat to her office for decibel management. Lena painted without fear. Adrian, shockingly, closed his laptop before midnight. But villains rarely vanish. They smolder. Damon Rice, stripped of influence, money, and reputation, tried one last stunt. A late-night email blast hit every journalist in Harbor City, a secret file about Adrian Vale, bank statements, doctored photos, conspiracies so sloppy they would have embarrassed a Reddit thread. It fizzled. The world had moved on. Nobody cared about Damon anymore except law enforcement. 2 days later, he was picked up on wire fraud charges unrelated to Adrian. His smirk finally cracked on live news, replaced with the hollow look of a man who'd lost every script. Max celebrated by drawing a comic panel of Captain Comet locking Damon in a cosmic jail labeled "No Wi-Fi." With Damon gone, the tower softened further. The marble floors still gleamed. The windows still overlooked Central Park like a painting. But now the sterile perfection had fingerprints, laughter, and warmth. The fridge door, covered in drawings. The guest wing, claimed by Paloma, who moved in after Sophia's recovery, filling the kitchen with recipes that actually smelled like home. Adrian had learned to live differently. Not just provide, but be there. He discovered that Max liked pancakes at midnight, that Sophia could demolish him in chess, that Lena painted best with music blaring at illegal volumes. And Lena, she stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Her show, The Glass Tower, became the talk of the art scene. Collectors circled, critics praised, but she never sold the cornerstone, the diner painting. It stayed in the tower above the mantel, watching over them like a permanent reminder of where it all began. 6 months later, Adrian hosted a different kind of gala, not for investors, but for the clinic funding Sophia's trial. No tuxedo stiffness, no stock speeches. Just survivors, families, doctors, and hope. On stage, he spoke briefly. I spent years believing money was the strongest currency in the world. I was wrong. The strongest currency is kindness. A waitress taught me that. He turned to Lena in the audience. The spotlight caught her eyes, wide and shining. The room applauded, but in that instant, it was just the two of them. Later, when the lights dimmed, Max dragged Lena onto the dance floor. "Dad's too stiff," he explained. "You're better." Adrian eventually joined, awkward but willing. Sophia filmed the whole thing, captioning it Vale Tower. More like Vale Family Tower. The clip went viral within an hour. That night, back in the tower, Adrian paused before the great canvas on the wall. The diner, the boy, the waitress. The reflection of a man in shadows. Lena came to stand beside him. "Funny," she said softly. "That was the moment you thought you were watching me. But really, I was watching you." Adrian smiled, a real one, unguarded. "Then maybe we were both saved by a napkin?" They stood there in silence, watching the painted past as the present moved gently around them, Max arguing with Sophia over who got the last slice of pizza, Paloma laughing from the kitchen, the city lights glowing beyond the glass. For once, Adrian didn't feel like a ghost in his own life. He felt present, alive, home. The story didn't end with a scandal, or a courtroom, or even a billionaire's empire. It ended with a boy who got his laughter back, a girl who got her future back, a waitress who found her canvas, and a man who finally realized that power without connection is just another kind of emptiness. The tower was no longer a monument, it was a home. And hanging above the mantel, the cornerstone whispered the truth to anyone who entered. One act of kindness can change everything.